What's up, guys? So let's talk about Diablo 4's endgame. Is it any fun? Does it need a rework, or is it unfun? And what does it essentially need to do? I've been checking out what people are saying in the Diablo community. I actually recently asked you guys over on the community tab on YouTube, what do you guys think about the Diablo 4's endgame? And I put, it's great, loving it. There's a 16% over here. It needs more things to do. This one was obviously the highest at 62%. Some people are still not at endgame, and there's also, of course, the category I just threw in there because, you know, some people may have followed me for other video games, whether it be Path of Exile, Fortnite, you know, I play a lot of other games on the channel as well from time to time, but I've been really grinding some Diablo, and I really felt like in terms of the endgame, I've been seeing this time and time again when I'm streaming. People are like, dude, what do you do at the endgame? It's kind of boring. All you do is just kill like monsters in dungeons, right? Where originally we had a list of a bunch of different things to do. So I wanted this video to be kind of like a two-part thing. So one, I wanted to go ahead and tackle what people are saying, and then also offer maybe some solutions to you guys to make the game feel a little bit better, because I play the game a lot more than I would say your average player here, because, you know, I'm making content on it, so I'm going to start my grind. But at the same time, I definitely feel some of the things a lot of people are talking about that are playing for multiple hours a day. Some people are still doing the campaign, obviously, with like, I'm not even at the end game yet. Now, the other thing I wanted to add to the people that aren't at the end game yet, when the season starts in maybe like a few weeks, because remember, season 1 is coming out in mid to late July, so we're just a few weeks away from the new season, and when the new season starts, you're going to be starting off at level 1. So the real thing is that when this new season drops, it might add some new content. Are the people that aren't even at endgame, are they even going to be wanting to play the season? Because if you tell someone that's like, you know, they just hit level 50, they're like, sweet, I'm going to make it to the next world tier so I can finally get these unique items. If you were to tell them, hey, do you want to start the season at level 0? They're going to be like, what? No way. I don't want to do that. And I totally get that. But at the same time, that's where the new content will actually be, which is where most people will actually play in, and that content needs to be big. Season 1 is going to be a major stone and a major pillar for Diablo 4, because if it's not good, I think a lot of people may dip out, and the reason why is because we have so many people that are brand new to Diablo. There's lots of other content creators that are, you know, PoE players, and if the season 1 isn't big, I think that impression will be huge in the game. Because I was looking at the forms of actual endgame content, and this is just via like a website loadout here, and it listed everything that you can do. Because remember when they were talking about this in terms of endgame content, they were telling us we have so many things to do, right? So let's actually break this down. What actually is the end game in the game, first off, because some people may not have reached the end game, or some people are doing some of these things and don't realize there really is only one form of actual end game content, which is essentially the nightmare dungeons. The rest of the stuff really doesn't matter, or you do like the capstone once. Once you do the capstone, you don't just farm the capstone, right? Maybe this could be, you know, a solution to have people be able to use this as a DPS check, and how fast can you kill the Uber Lilith. But since the capstones, you do them once and then that's it, it's not really a form of endgame content, right? So let's talk about all of them. First off, Nightmare Dungeons, which you guys are going to be seeing some gameplay of my sorceress here. That's all I'm really doing for endgame content. So as far as this goes, this is an actual form of endgame content, because what you're doing is you're leveling up your gems, or glyphs in this sort of case. So it's actually very linear with Diablo 3's progression in terms of endgames. Instead of getting legendary gems, you get glyphs, and all it's giving you is numerical increases, right? There are a few that may change the way certain skill works, whether it's radius or the way it effectively does something, but relatively it's the same thing, right? As far as world bosses go, world bosses, you know, you can get the prisms to grant your ability to grab sockets, but once you have everything socketed up, do you really need to be doing world bosses anymore? No, not really, because you go over there and you're wasting time not only going to the world boss, because it takes like a minute, because this game wants you to traverse the entire world, but on top of that, I was thinking that, well, you're sitting there waiting for, you know, 2-3 minutes at a time, because you need to get there early, and you need to be there at the very specific time that these happen. They're really not going to be worth it, because, again, you're not going to upgrade your glyphs. That's the only form of like real, I'm always going to get my progression. But once you max out all of the things to 21, then what do you really do, right? That's kind of the real question. There was actually a post by someone that's level 100 that was talking about this as well, which we'll go into. So as far as the Helltide areas, you can actually get the stuff that's required. You know, there's Fiend Roses, the legendary, you get the Cinders, and then you get the Forgotten Souls, right? And then you can start upgrading your gear. But after you upgrade your gear, the Helltide, compared to doing, again, Nightmare Dungeons, because you're not getting actual power with this, you can get upgrades, but once you upgrade all of your gear to 5.5, well, does the Helltide have any relevancy? Yeah, you can still farm up stuff, so when you get a better item, you can do it. But honestly, the Nightmare Dungeons are going to be more cost-effective in terms of time for density, as well as being able to, again, upgrade your glyphs, which is always going to give you raw extra power. Next up, the Tree of Whispers is basically the bounty system, but again, with this, it comes down to pretty much the same thing. Well, you're not getting glyphs for power. Yes, you can get a legendary box that maybe gives you some sort of legendaries, right? But at the end of the day, Nightmare Dungeons, you can also get legendaries in there. At the very end of the Nightmare Dungeon, you get a guaranteed, usually a legendary, or sometimes you can even get uniques with it. So it's much more cost effective to just do Nightmare Dungeons. Again, the point of doing the Trio of Whispers, there are some like different recipes that you can get with this, but for the most part, it's mediocre compared to Nightmare Dungeons. The Fields of Hatred, well, if there was this huge incentive, like I actually got one of the hardest thing, which is like the Chosen, Lilith's Chosen or something like that, where you have to kill 100, you gotta get 100 points in the PvP zone, and then after that you have to survive, where you're marked on the map for everyone to kill you, and if you survive for 5 minutes, then you get the Hatred's Chosen title. So it's just like literally text. There's no a huge incentive to get it. I was actually pretty disappointed when they just gave me 8,500 of the seeds, which you can farm literally in like a minute. So getting this as a reward needs to be way better. You need to be able to maybe get a high chance for a unique item. If anyone has played PvP, to get 100 points is not easy at all, because you cannot just leave the zone and keep your like points for it. So this is something where, yeah, it's not really a form of endgame content in terms of being able to like, oh, okay, I got my character ready, I'm just gonna slam up PvP, because it becomes kind of a one-shot fest. Is there skill in PvP? We'll talk about that maybe in another video, but for the most part, a lot of times it feels like, especially thorns, barbs, they can be out of control in terms of like the balance. Obviously, they don't really want to balance PvP. They actually mentioned this, like, you know, it's just kind of like a fun zone thing that whatever. They're not trying to balance the whole game around it. I think it'd be cool to have at least like a setup where you can do 1v1s, 2v2s. That would actually add a lot more endgame content. So hopefully this is something that I can, you know, relay in terms of feedback as a partner. This is one thing that I've wanted to have structured PvP for the game. As far as capstones, I already mentioned, you do them once and that's pretty much it. In terms of world tier, you go to the highest one. The gameplay does not change between world tiers in terms of like actually what's there, right? Like there's not a special monster that does not spawn in the lower world tier that it spawns in that makes the whole game completely different. And I think that adding different monsters to higher world tiers would actually make it different, because the difference between Torment 1 in terms of like gameplay, right? Or if you played like Greater Rift 1 versus Greater Rift 150 in Diablo 3, what's the difference in gameplay, right? The gameplay, the core idea is the same, with the exception of, you know, maybe you can, once you do like a GR70, you could start getting, of course, primals to drop. For the most part, the gameplay stays the same. You're just getting higher numerical stats. And there's not any like chase item other than Shaco right now, but we'll talk about more about like chase items in a second. As far as the Paragon board, I mean, that's kind of something that you'll get regardless. And then in terms of the Codex of Power, yes, you can do all the dungeons, but that comes down to, well, if you're doing Nightmare Dungeons, you're just going to start opening up the sigils and then just go to the different area. So you'll eventually get these, if you just keep on slamming out Nightmare Dungeons, you'll eventually, if you do all the Nightmare Dungeons, you'll get all the Codex of Power. So again, it ties in the exact same thing. And then mention seasonal content. Pretty much it comes down to, you have your Nightmare Dungeons, but once everything is 21-21, what do? Just go straight for PvP? Because again, most of these things in terms of like progression, Nightmare Dungeons are still going to be the best. This was actually recently tweeted out that Nightmare Dungeons have the best drops. So nonetheless, let's go ahead and continue on with some of the other things that I want to talk about and kind of highlight here. This one was just talking about endgames just feeling bad, and it's kind of like, oh, it's a constant cycle of do dungeon, get some XP, okay? Like I mentioned, this is like the same echoing. Some of these, like, they've been getting upvoted a lot in the more recent times, and I just want to kind of highlight what people are really saying, okay, once this one eventually loads. So this one was a very long post. This one actually was huge. This is talking about, once you're level 100, what is there to do? And I want to actually offer some suggestion, because I felt like once I got it to like level 80 something on a rogue, I was like, I'm doing the same thing. I kind of felt a lot of the things that people were saying, and you know, while there's people that are saying like crybaby moments in terms of just you're complaining, but there's like not that many people that are level 80, right? Blizzard most recently said on the campfire, most people that are playing this game at this current time have not finished the game. But once they finish the game, in terms of the campaign, they're going to be just doing the Nightmare Dungeons, and then they're going to be in the same category that a lot of the people that have been grinding this game for like, you know, 50 plus hours as of right now. But in terms of like post level 100, this is something that I wanted to mention. Trying out new builds, it's actually very difficult to try out a new build, because your entire skill tree and your Paragon board, like the skill tree you can kind of change up, that's not too bad, but then you have to rework the entire Paragon board, which at that point, maybe making a new character could be better. But most people are looking at that like, no way, I don't want to make a new character. But if you were to tell me the same system exists in terms of like the Paragon board in Diablo 4 with Diablo 3's leveling system, in Diablo 3 I can hit up a homie and within 10-15 minutes I'm max level and I'll have all my Paragon points and I can just make a new character. And I think that this needs to exist in Diablo 4. If I was to make a new character and like, let's say, reach level 50 and then I have all of my other Paragon points, like the 200 plus Paragon points, I would be more than happy to make new characters. And I think that this is a huge issue with making alts, doing all of the renown and just doing so much again. That would be a great thing. And then they're also talking about chase items being a like really hard thing to get. I actually think I I have more fun when I made a new character and started just grinding a new character versus just grinding from level, like, it really becomes really relevant when you hit level 60. You feel like it's just an uphill battle to get any XP, to feel like you're getting any upgrades, because, you know, at level 60 you can equip pretty much the best pieces of gear. You can go to world tier 4 and start farming and get your ancestral things, but there isn't any chase item that you can get within a reasonable time frame, with the exception of just farming for thousands and thousands of hours perhaps, because the drop rate of Shaco, as far as we're aware of, there's only 2 in the entire world that have dropped, and this game has millions of players, right? So they're killing millions and billions of monsters, and the fact that only 2 of these drop, sometimes when you tell people, oh, it's just gonna be a super rare item, you may never get it, does that really give people incentive to play? Or would it be better to have the ability to trade certain items? You know, I'm talking about being able to trade uniques, being able to trade legendaries, and then people can trade gold, to have at least in the mindset that, well, if I just keep on playing the game, I'm getting gold, I'm getting other items, I can trade with people, and I need an in-game. I'm not talking about you gotta go to another website like PoE Trade and start trading items. I think this needs to be built into the game as far as being able to see people list items maybe in, like, you know, a hideout or whatever. And well, I want to say that it doesn't have to like copy PoE exactly with the hideout system. It needs a way for us to feel like we're getting some sort of progression as we're playing for like 5-10 hours a day, because there's times when I'm playing my rogue, which is about 90 at this moment, and I'm like, dude, I'm playing for several hours and there's no upgrades, right? Like, yeah, I can do nightmare dungeons, but I've been doing it for like 5-6 hours, and I feel like there needs to be more of a progression. And they talked about PvP as well. I think in terms of PvP, they need that system that was implemented in Diablo 3 that never really saw the light of day. It would just add a lot more. This would actually have a purpose to do like clan battles. This is a huge opportunity. I know I keep on talking about PvP because I desperately really want to see a competitive PvP just system. Not like, it doesn't really have to have leaderboards, but like a fair PvP, because I've been playing a lot of PvP, and sometimes I'm walking up to people, I'm like, okay, you're dead in one hit. It's not satisfying for me after a couple times. Like, for the first few times, I'm like, all right, guys, let's go PvP, but it doesn't become as satisfying when you just melt something, right? Anyways, this is just another post talking about Endgame is terrible. The open world events need to give a much better reward. Sure, there's like that ghostly mount that you can get, but the Endgame in terms of like opening the whole world up, it's really cool. Like, once you finish the campaign, you're like, oh, wow, I get this giant world, this is awesome. And then you go to realize, well, it's kind of just more of the same. And when these events start, yeah, there's like a boss that comes up, but pretty much there's no incentive to really roam around the world. And I think that Immortal actually does a better job at just running around in the open world versus just slamming out the rifts again and again and again, which is kind of what you're doing in Diablo 4, which is very strange that Immortal system actually seems more advanced in terms of like, yeah, just roam around. You can just go do events, and like, you're just kind of partying up with random people. And I think they need a party system for the game, but that's something I already talked about, and they've mentioned the campfire. They're like, we hear you guys, but no plans, at least for like a release date on that. It's specifically once you hit, like this guy's mentioning 70 to 100, I actually think 60 to 100, it needs a lot more content, okay? Not even like the capstone. We already have World Tier 5 confirmed. Maybe they expected most people to hit World Tier 3, and then, because again, remember, we're talking about majority people. So once Season 1 starts, maybe people are just at World Tier 3, they're going to start World Tier 4, but then when the new season drops, you're going to have to re-level up from 1. That's really awkward to make a player that, again, just reached level 60 to say, oh, start from level 1, the new season start. I don't know if they are going to actually even want to play. But I think the progression, it needs definitely something else. And I'm not talking about just like way more XP. That would help out, because then I'm like, okay, I'm getting all these Paragon points. I'm making my build. It's coming along a lot faster versus like it's a slog to be able to just slam out, you know, a bunch. I'm talking hundreds of nightmare dungeons to be able to feel like you are accomplishing really anything, because one Paragon point isn't something that really gives you a huge advantage in the game, other than like once you hit like your legendary node, which will take, you know, 20-30 points to usually get. So I think that there could be something for sure in between, maybe a new way to play the game. Just something in between would be excellent. And it really comes down to the dungeons also feeling like a slog in general. The whole Diablo 4 game with this, you know, do this quest here, okay, now walk way over here, walk way over here. And I almost understand why they did this. And while I could say that, you know, in my personal opinion, this is designed as a business decision because of the horse existing, the mounts, right? They have horse mounts that you can buy with money. This is how they are going to directly, you know, gain some sort of monetary system with Diablo 4. The mount system, I'm not a huge fan of getting on the mount, walking here, walking way over here. They did actually say, though, in the campfire, that once you open up a sigil next patch they're implementing in, you're just going to be in front of the dungeon. That is going to help out, but it still doesn't help out that, like, you know, I'm not in the right town town. Oh, this town doesn't have this. Now I gotta go walk over to another area super far away. I'm talking in town, I will mount up and do something because these NPCs are so dang far away. But again, I don't know if this is something that will ever be fixed in terms of like, you know, just removing the mount system because I feel like it's unnecessary. But I'm curious to know, honestly, in the comment section below, be very vocal about the mounts. Let me know how you guys feel about it. Do you guys like the mounts? Do you not like the mounts? I personally don't think they need to exist. Waypoints are designed to get you, once you've completed the game, okay? I think the mount system is totally fine for the campaign because it lets you feel this giant open world, and when you're walking super slow, you're like, wow, this is actually huge. But because of the density being so small, and even in dungeons, like you'll kill some monsters and then you gotta walk to this other room. Okay, now there's a few monsters, now I gotta keep on walking. Like, the density needs to be increased, and they said that they're not increasing density, but they're gonna increase the XP rate. So while we still are getting something at the end of the day, they already increased the monster's HP from the review copy of the game, which is where I essentially reviewed the game, and that's why I was like, oh, like the game was, in my personal opinion, better in the review copy than the current copy because one, all of the nerfs to the HP on the monsters and the different scaling, it definitely makes the game feel a lot slower than it did in the review copy of the game due to, again, nerfs and multiple things. So talking about the endgame in general, like what you're seeing in the gameplay is just Nightmare Dungeons being slammed out, but like all I'm doing is to get like a small increase in numerical stats. Instead of doing like 6.2, I get to do like 6.4, right? Instead of 6.2. Like, these numerical increases aren't big enough to really feel. Sure, you know, once you get all of your nodes checked out, the difference between, you know, getting like a small amount of maybe like 0% damage at the start, once you get the whole node finished out, you can get like 80 plus damage. Sure, you can feel that, but that's over the course of a long time, and since the world is scaling, you feel almost the same as you're progressing the whole way through, if that makes sense. And I think at some point, like in Diablo 3, okay, this is what Diablo 3 did, that, you know, you could feel once you get that legendary power for a 300, 500% multiplier, right? You felt that power. But in this game, do you really ever get to feel that insane power with the Paragon board? I would say not really. Maybe it's not designed that way, but again, I feel like the system is very similar to D3's system, where it's just like, okay, well, my Bane of Trap, I level it up, okay, now I do 0.3% more damage, oh, okay, now another 0.3 as I'm just upgrading it, right? So I feel like there could be something that really makes you feel more powerful in the game. And while there is items like Harlequin Crest, where if it drops, sure, it becomes super powerful, but you need to wait for majority of players to feel like they are working towards earning something versus, oh, well, just, it's like a 1 in 10,000 million, 1 quadrillion chance of you getting it. And at that point, a lot, the majority of the player base is going to be like, nah. But I really feel like this game was designed initially for people as an entry-based game for an action RPG versus someone that's like a hardcore action RPG player. But then you get towards, like, again, level 60, or even once you complete the campaign, it just takes way too long. And then that's where, like, the hardcore people can grind for lots and lots of time. But in terms of the long grind, again, there needs to be something in between with this. So, I mean, I'm not saying Shaco should just drop everywhere, but there needs to be some sort of way where you can maybe trade items, or, you know, have this be a tradable item, so then people can at least feel like they're working towards getting the item, you know, eventually. And a lot of people end up just slamming out dungeons. And I don't know how fun this is for some streamers, but like I know back when like you know, Champion's Demise was the place, or Eridu, people would literally stream themselves farming for 10 hours a day and resetting the dungeon. I just cannot do that, but I did some data for you guys, and like, you know, that's what people genuinely do. And I don't think that that's a form of endgame content where, again, that was initially designed to go and reset the dungeon again and again because people are logging out of the game. That's probably not intentionally designed, because that's very stressful for the servers, and that's where you get stuck logging in. It's saying like your count is already in use and stuff like that. It'd be really nice to be able to reset, like once we are in the dungeon, we could just open up a portal and it'd be fast, not like, oh, we have to channel this whole thing. I would rather it be like D2 system, where we just have a portal, we go back out, and then we can slam in another sigil. And this is PoE right here. I think a hideout would be an excellent thing, and this goes directly into monetization. If you have a hideout, you can sell way more microtransactions sort of all of like the little horse mount little things. You could put these as decorations and sell them for like $2-3 a piece. This is money, and on top of that, the player gets to like make their own cool hideout. You can have guild hideouts so people can group up to do certain things. Maybe trade. It would be a much better thing. Maybe you could have like a guild like trade box where like you can put in items and, you know, it would be able to sell, and then you'd have a guild fund. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is guilds need to be, or clans in the game is what they call it. You need to have some sort of like unification of like, why are you in the clan together? Maybe have clan battles. Maybe have other things that could be participants of clans. I know in Diablo Immortal there's a system with that as well, where you have a clan and like there's different things you can do with the clan. It incentivizes it, right? Whereas Diablo, it's like you're in a clan, all you're doing is seeing on the bottom left, like when they die or when and then they get some sort of achievement. I think that could be better. In terms of like the microtransactions, hopefully this could be something that we see in the future in terms of like just adding things to the hideout, because I want them to be able to make money so they can at least do something with you know, the new content, because if there's no money, then they can't make new content, right? But I never had a huge incentive to really visit the shop, so you know, maybe they can add more things to it, because at the end of the day, more monetization means more content for us potentially. So I was talking about trade in the game and even crafting, but I really think that they should have some sort of way that you can trade, a trade like thing that's built in the game, because like if I have what I consider like the best item in the game, how am I supposed to share it with someone? How does it really hold value if I get you know, an item that's maybe 2% better than, you know, I have the top like bow in the game or whatever. If I want to trade it, maybe I want to make another build, and I think this really ties into actually adding longevity with trade versus the idea of, well, if you have trade, people are just going to get the best items super fast. While it is true that if you're allowed trade to exist in your game, people are going to, of course, get their best items faster. But if I want to play a different character, I don't really have very much incentives, and I'm sure a lot of you guys feel this way that have reached maybe like level 80 or close to 100 or even hit 100. Do you have an incentive to make another character? It's like, I'm thinking like, wow, that's kind of rough to make a new character and level it up to 100. But if I already have the item ready to go for me, I think that I could actually enjoy this a lot more. That's at least my personal take and thoughts on adding the ability to have trade with the game. And on top of that, you could see directly, well, how much gold do I have, and maybe how much is he, well, you know, asking for it, in this case like a mirror. But you guys get the idea. The point is that if I'm at least building gold, right, while I'm playing, and then I know that someone has this item that I can acquire, I am working towards something, because once I have hit like level 70 and 80, I'm thinking like, well, I guess I'm upgrading my glyphs, but like I don't have a big goal. It's just, well, I'm just kind of going along, just kind of playing to play. And at the end of the day, that's what a game should be. It should be fun, not like, oh, just got to grind to get some more power. I hope a Shaco drops. Again, it goes back to my same point. You know what's interesting is like they had this system before, and like you can see in red, these items actually before, there's actually more crazier things. Maybe this will come out next season. I don't know. But there was something originally called angelic and demonic powers, and this would actually tie into your character's build. Were you angelic, or they call it ancestral at the time? And then there's another thing called demonic power, and you kind of had not only your character's build, but then you would have, do you want to become demonic or do you want to become ancestral? And that would have been a really cool system to have clans that were demonic and ancestral, and you have this like ongoing war that would exist inside of the game to have like the different like factions fight. This is getting way too crazy though, but it would be cool, right? I think that it would be a really cool in-game system to have once you hit like a certain level. Maybe it could be level 100, so to give you something to go for, you can fight in the battlefield of eternity, and you would have demonic, you'd have people that would side with the demonic, you'd have like a Lilith side, then you'd have like a side with like heaven, and they would be this eternal conflict. That is 10,000 IQ. It's over 9,000! Maybe I've actually spoiled the DLC that's coming out for the game. This is not, I'm not giving you guys any leaked data, okay? Even though I'm a partner, they have not told me anything about this, but I swear this is looking like where it's going to be going, and if I just predicted it, well, you guys heard it here first, because I think this is a really great system. Maybe in the DLC in the future would be really cool. I think crafting in this game in general could be way better. This is last epoch, by the way, but looking at the crafting system, I literally get to roll one stat on the item. This is literally copy paste Diablo 3, but I can't even see what the rolls are. I gotta go to a separate website to see what the rolls could be, because like maybe, let's say I really wanted, I don't know what class this is, but maybe I really wanted fire damage, right? If I'm playing certain classes, I can never get fire damage, and you have this casual player base that like, well, I don't know about this, how am I supposed to know it can roll fire damage? They're just rolling forever, wasting all their gold because they don't know what the rolls are. Add the rolls to the list so we at least know what the thing can actually roll. But like the fact that we can only roll one thing, I mean, if we could roll two things, they would make the game way too easy in terms of getting stuff. But I actually would like that, because again, it lets me build all these other different builds, because I'm looking at some items, I'm like, oh dude, it's gonna be so hard to get this one item to have the exact rolls that I want. But I think the crafting could be way better than an enchant of one slam on a legendary power and that's it. I think the crafting needs to be more fleshed out. We need more different, like, you know, materials. Maybe like this certain material that we can craft with has a high chance or guarantees us to get, let's say, crit damage, vulnerability damage. I'm talking about I just want some sort of crafting to really exist in the game. Maybe make crafting a form of endgame content. That would be kind of cool too. I mean, heck, people love crafting videos. I mean, look at this. This almost has 1 million views in terms of like how to craft in the game. I think there is definitely a lot of players in PoE. I know there's people out there that literally, they don't even like play the game. They just sit there and they like crafting. And I think that's a really cool big brain way of like a strange way of endgame content. So you can actually, you know, sell your items. I think that would be really cool. Again, for gold, obviously, I know that if I type in like Diablo 4 gold, there's like websites, how to buy gold and stuff. With the best websites to buy gold. Don't buy gold, by the way. Some of those accounts, they will get your account banned and whatnot. But I think trade needs to exist in the game. I mean, yes, we can trade yellow items, but I need trade to exist in the game where I can see like some sort of auction house versus visiting a Discord. I think it just really needs to exist in the game, like an auction house or something where I can buy items with my gold that I get, or with gems, or whatever the currency is, just to feel like while I'm playing the game, I'm working towards a larger goal. But anyways, that's my rant in terms of like the Diablo 4 endgame, because after playing the endgame for a lot of times, I definitely notice and I feel some of the same things that you guys are feeling. And with, of course, the seasons, this could actually change, and maybe a lot of these things will be fixed, because the difference between Diablo 2 versus Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction were massive. The difference between Diablo 3 Vanilla and Reaper of Souls is massive. And I think with Diablo 4, when we get our first expansion, I'm not talking about like season 1, I'm talking our first actual expansion, I think that there will be a lot of these issues fixed. There's going to be so many more forms of like things to do, and that's what I really wanted, because at the end of the day, even visiting this other website that lists a bunch of the other forms of endgame content, right now, it's basically nightmare dungeons for the people that have already, you know, 5-5. And it's not even that difficult to 5-5 all of your items. I'm not saying, by the way, to make that more difficult, it's fine, but I just want more things to kind of do in the game versus just slamming out dungeons, because the dungeon layouts, once you kind of play them, they're kind of the same. I know there's multiple dungeons, but some of them, they're the same map, they're just twisted in a different angle. Like if you've played like some of the maps, you've definitely noticed this. But within the future, hopefully these issues will be addressed. And one thing I want to add to this video and the final part is, if you're not having fun with the game, maybe go try out a new character versus just slamming your head against the wall, just slamming out more nightmare dungeons to get a small like 0.3. I'm not even talking about 1%. It's like a 0.3 increase in some areas for your DPS or your survivability. And I really enjoyed myself playing more characters than just trying to grind out everything to 100. Because remember, we're getting a big buff in the future for a lot of the different skills. It was like a 13-page document they talked about in the campfire. So hopefully once they buff up all these different skills, maybe add more unique items, things like Frozen Orb and Chain Lightning will be a lot more playable versus, well, what you're seeing, which is like 90% of the Sorcerers community are all playing Ice Shards right now, because it's really like the only build. Anyways, I ranted long enough. I could talk about build diversity, but that's a topic for another day. Anyways, that's gonna wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, subscribe to the bell so you guys get to see when we drop the video going over all the new mega buff patch that's coming very soon. Anyways, take care. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.